Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome again to PANGEA Talks, our CEO series, where we feature conversations with some of the world's most innovative CEOs, some of whom are Canadian, that are changing the world. Joining us today is the CEO of Jamstack, Chris Prendergast. Chris, welcome to the call. Before I jump into the conversation today, I want to share with the audience a little bit about who you are and some of the incredible things you've been up to leading up to your work at Jamstack and the vision that you have for it. Chris has a multidisciplinary background, which started out studying engineering physics, and then he moved into innovation in education as a certified teacher. He's now fully dedicated to improving the user experience with music technology. During this time as a professional musician, Chris became personally frustrated with his music gear, which set him on a path to found Jamstack, a company which is changing how music is played, collaborated, and shared. Chris, welcome to PANGEA Talks.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Yeah, it's some incredible work that your team is doing. We're actually at PANGEA fascinated by some of this remarkable work that you have created, you have innovated, and as we get into the conversation, you're actually the Jamstack product is actually in the same manufacturing areas that some Apple products are in. So that'll be a really fascinating story for you to get into later on in the conversation for folks to learn from you. But I am curious, and I'm sure many folks in the audience are curious, what is a Jamstack?
Cool. Yeah. So the company in our first product kind of share the name, which is interesting. But yeah, we've been working on two products. One is a hardware smart amplifier, and I'll talk more about that. And then the other is a innovative music streaming service where you're stacking jams there too. But yeah, initially our first product, the Jamstack 1, was a really different type of amplifier, primarily for the electric guitar. It attached onto the body of the instrument. It used your smartphone to process the audio and effects and allowed you to plug directly in for recording. And it was more like a Bluetooth speaker. So it was super versatile. You could sound like a Marshall, you could sound like a Fender, you could sound like whatever you wanted. And it was all optimized around getting going really quickly when you're inspired and not having to deal with all of the mess and stuff. So that's where the initial idea came from. The vision's grown a lot. We've got a second generation amp, which is much more complex, and we can get into all the fun things it can do. And we're also making streaming software now to change how music streaming happens as well. So
massive, ambitious plans by the sounds of it. A streaming platform. I'm sure you're catching the attention of Apple and Google and all the big names out there, with even Amazon with their streaming services. So I'm sure at some point in this conversation, we'll probably hint at some of the fun conversations that are going on with partnerships down the road for you. One of the key things I wanted to really understand, and as a family office, when we look at allocating funds and partnering with what we deem to be successful Canadian companies, we always start with the why, and we wanted to really understand from you before we get too much into the why. You said it was frustrating for you as a musician. Let's talk about that frustration a little, and then we get into the big why Jamstack is important to you. But what was the frustration?
Yeah, there's a number of them. And talking first about the hardware. So playing music, playing guitar, specifically lead guitar player, very important to me. However, getting started and doing all of the fun, rich things that I wanted to do was a huge pain. Like there's 6 or 7 pieces of gear you've got to put together if you want to, loop, record, even just play along to music, experiment with different sounds. And I knew that it didn't have to be this way. I knew that was just kind of the way the industry had gone, and that they weren't interested in doing something different. So I started to become obsessed with what would an ideal process, an ideal experience be? Because I knew that when I got there, that it would change my behavior. And I also knew that all of my friends in my network, this is going back a long time, were having these same problems. and I knew that they would play more, and people that just weren't willing or didn't have the money to and experience to make all of this happen would do it more often, and that would really change things. So that was super, super important. People listening who aren't guitar players or play an instrument may not know, but like, you've got to drag out a heavy amplifier, then you've got, a pedal for each sound you want to make. And if you want to record, you've got a expensive interface, you got your laptop, and you've got cables running everywhere. If you want to play along to music, you can't play through your amplifier. You have to get your stereo system involved, and then good luck getting, the tracks without the layer that you're interested in. It's really silly, and people are busy. And so that became really, really, really personally important to me to change that, because I wanted to play more, and I didn't have the time to dedicate my entire life to making that happen. And then on the software side, which is also super important to me, is I was a professional musician, and I got to play with multi-tracks, which means you have every layer, every instrument one by one. And it was so incredibly fun and powerful. And I realized you don't have to be a professional musician to use and enjoy music this way. I knew that people that were just starting or were more intermediate would love the ability to play with these things and would learn so much. And then that was a real shame. It was a real shame that was only happening with a very, very small percentage. I also knew that, like, myself and my friends, we had ideas that we had recorded, and they were just sitting there rotting on hard drives. They weren't doing anything. So, and again, that was a shame. It was all, to me, there was so much talent, so much interest, and there was all this friction for collaboration, for playing, for getting inspired. And someone had to just dedicate time and the technology to remove all of those friction points. And when that happened, it's going to change things. And we can talk more about that.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to do something really fun that you would know, as well as the next either professional musician or even someone who's just in their basement with their axe and they're grinding out some tunes that they're inspired by. So I want to do something really neat with you. I want to go through a quick, and because we take care of wealth here under the PANGEA family banner. You talked about the different elements, like the pedals. You talked about the stereo. You talked about the amp. You talked about all these different pieces of equipment. Can we do something really fun with you right now? Because it top of mind. Can we just, for the sake of this experience, have you just go through in your mind and even like with your fingers say, I have to purchase a pedal, which is X number of dollars. I've got to purchase an amp, which is X, and a stereo. And I just want to have our audience really get a sense as to what was going on before Jamstack.
Sure. Yeah. So an amplifier, they range a lot. But if you want something that sounds decent, you're into $300-400, minimum. A good pedal, an analog pedal, is about $150, and there's a lot of differences in them. So if you're trying to sound like something you heard on the radio, chances are, you're into 10 pedals before you're really flexible in how you can even sound. An amp also not being versatile. So if you really wanted to sound like lots of musicians, you're into 3-4 amps there too. Then you've got a loop station. You're into $400 there. There are some cheaper ones. If you a recording interface, you're not going to get that for under $200. And then, of course, there's your laptop. There's your stereo system, of course, if you want to play along to music. So, and it has to, if you want to play loud, it's got to be able to do that. And the source of the music itself. And I'm sure there's more. But, it gets really... And then you can buy kind of these pedal boards. They're a few $1,000s that they do have several pedals built in, and that's certainly an improvement. Because if you go the traditional route, like every time you set up, you're like readjust. You've got like 6 or 7 power points. You have to buy a special power box to handle 6 or 7 pedals to deliver the current that they need, or you're replacing 9-volt batteries all the time. Like, it's really silly. So
indeed, and my dad's a guitar player. He does electric, the acoustic. He's on the keyboard as well, and I can play a pretty mean "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" on the sixth string. But I know from being around the music environment and production music, there are also the cables that we haven't even started to talk about that connect everything, which is another few $100s in cables alone.
Yeah, and you've got to be like, there's so much like technical knowledge too. Like even if you like gave someone $10,000 worth of gear and they're just getting started, like getting that routed, understanding how to set everything up, it's a huge long learning process too.
Yeah, and now as we talk through it, and part of the reason I wanted to actually go down that path is I want the folks around this call to really understand that you get it, you live it. Like the frustration is real, and it's not just you, it's any other person that is in and around a music environment. And folks who are just even learning music for the first time, they'll start to experience some of this frustration. And Jamstack has a solution. From that frustration, I guess, became your why. Let's talk a little bit more about why Jamstack is important to you.
Yeah, so there's the hardware product and what unlocking the potential for people is really important. I mean, I wanted a product for myself. I think being your own customer is really a strong thing when you're starting off a business. And I've always had high expectations of the things that I use. It's just very important to me that the things that are around me kind of work well and empower me. And I wanted to empower others. On the software side, again, I think some of the most interesting things happening right now in music are collaborations. It's still a big pain. It's getting better, but it's really hard to make that happen. And you've got to dedicate a whole day, and people just don't always have that time. So I'm super excited to see more of that. I'm super excited to do that myself. I'm super excited to give these professional level experiences, like great effects at your fingertips, looping, recording, multi-tracks, being able to access layers of songs. I know that that's going to change things for musicians, and it's also going to create a whole bunch of fun music, interesting mixes of genres, of professionals, of intermediates, all working together. And yeah, I just really want to see that future.
You talked about the future, and what better way to talk about Jamstack? And there's a few things I wanted to share back to you in the backdrop of this conversation, being, of course, grumblings of a recession and all the other things in the big macro economy environment. But I also want to talk about some perspectives out there that suggest that even as we hear the grumblings of a recession, that there's actually a need for the Jamstack solution because of something most folks listening would know called the creator economy. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the conversation, but I want to clear some space on this call for you to really get into how Jamstack will change the world. And you talked a little bit, you just hinted at it, about the two products that Jamstack has. You showed the version 1 on screen, and I'm sure folks definitely want to see what version 2 looks like if you have one close by. And we'll talk about the software as well. But before I do that, I want to talk about lead the next segment of how Jamstack will change the world with a quote from an article in Music Magazine. It's written by Jonathan D. Kramer. He says that technology is ubiquitous, full stop. Technology, thus it's hardly surprising that it has a profound influence on the art of music in the 20th century. He says that it has altered how music is transmitted, preserved, heard, performed, and composed. Less and less often do we hear musical sound that has not at some level been shaped by technology. Technology is involved in the reinforcement of concert halls, the recording and broadcasting of music, and the design and construction of even musical instruments. He goes on to give examples here about how many church organs, for example, use the synthesized or sample sounds rather than actual pipes. Instruments are now available that have and what look like piano keyboards and make a sound like the piano timbres, but which are actually dedicated to digital synthesizers, virtuoso performers whose instrument is the turntable, are now part of not only the world of disco, but the world of concert music. Technology is changing the essence of music, and so many musicians are starting to really appreciate the extent of its influence. I want to let that be a segue to some of the, I keep using the word incredible when I talk about Jamstack, and it's because I'm a bit of a novice when it comes to music, but I think what you're up to is incredible. And maybe you can link the two thoughts from that quote to what's going on with Jamstack and your philosophy as a leader.
Yeah, I think it's the shift from analog to digital is what. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of pieces to that, and it's not as simple as it sounds, but it's profound. It's as profound as the difference between a record and an MP3, and what that did to how our consumption and access and to music. The same thing's happening with analog now. Digital sounds, effects, and initially had a bad rap for a bit because they were inferior, right, to the real thing, the authentic, circuits that we're talking about. And I have a lot of that gear, of course. But that's no longer the case. We're now finally at a place where the best ears on the planet cannot tell the difference between the algorithms and the analog. And that is filtering down into the consumers, so that they can basically, it democratizes everything. It allows you to, if you can't afford a $2,000 rack mounted, piece of equipment, you don't need it anymore because algorithms are free, they're shareable. You can, well, not free, but there's no cost for delivery, I should say. And that's incredibly powerful. And what that means is that more people are going to have access to that. More people are going to make better music easier, and you can just your imagination is the limit when everything's digital. You can save it, you can share it, you can have marketplaces for sounds, and we're really excited about all that stuff. Specifically, go ahead. Sorry, Declan, I can't
after
hear
you. Yeah, after you. You had some specifics to share. Go ahead.
So that's how I think that technology is going to change the world. How we're going to use that to change the world specifically is, again, multifaceted in the hardware and software. So on the hardware side, we've taken everything I just mentioned is all built into our Jamstack 2 amplifier, which I'll show you in a minute. You can literally open it up and press a button, and you can sound like whoever you want to. And then the recording, the looping, all of that stuff, it's all possible. One device, you and your smartphone. And you can text your friend a sound that you made, and they can open it up on their amp and experience that instantly. It's like, hey, I bought this really cool pedal. You can come over to my house and you can borrow it sometime. You know what I mean? Or you can just text a friend an entire setup that you made and that you're really excited about, and then they can have that experience instantly. That's the difference between analog and digital. And I think it's understated. So you're going to see more people playing more music in different environments. Okay, that's whether at parties, buskers in the park. We all are used to seeing the acoustic guitar at the campfire, and the odd saxophone player in the subway. But our hardware is really going to take people out of their basements and into the world, playing and jamming and physically collaborating more often. On the software side, which again is a music streaming service in multi-track, is going to change the world in a few different ways. So first of all, it's likely going to change how you consume music. So we all kind of split our time between maybe like apps like TikTok and Instagram and Netflix, right? I would say Netflix would be the analogy to like Spotify, Apple Music, which are not social really at all. there's a slight attempt on Spotify to be somewhat social, but they're not social platforms. But of course, and neither really is Netflix, but TikTok is, and that's what we're doing for audio. So the ability to jump in, play along with your favorite creators that you know from YouTube or major media or people that you found on our platform. Your music IQ is going to change. I think the world in general, when you have the ability to listen to things and understand how layers of music make a composition, it's amazing how much more musical you become. And I think that people are going to become much more musical and more empowered, and feel how like they have the confidence to participate in something that they may not dare have done previously. So those are two. And I will say one more point is we want to give musicians an option to basically to grow a following without having to do all of the auxiliary things that you have to do as a musician. We talk more about that too, but those are the ways I think we're going to change the world in the short term.
Yeah, it's really powerful, and I'm moved by it. And as you keep talking about it, I'm the type of person who likes to see things in action. So if you feel like you are inspired that now's the right time to share some of this great stuff, I think folks would love to see it in action, and even see the software after we give the demo. I know you've got the Jamstack 2 already attached to your guitar, which is on there right now, and it's already it's amazing. We'll talk about that thing's already started to sell in pre-sale orders, but we'll get into details on that later. But you know the stage is yours. Let's have you walk us through.
Yeah, first of all, you can see how fast it is to get started. So I actually leave it on my guitar. And you want to play along to something, right? I've got my phone here. I'll show you how that works. Script and just kind of play around. And then I've got all these presets that I've kind of created on our control app, different piece of software, and you can just cycle through. Or you can sound. Right, all on your fingertips, and changing all of those things is also super effortless as well. So there's the Jamstack. Some things I didn't demonstrate. There is it has wireless technology as well. So if you're the type of person that wants to keep it on their desk, you can cast out to it using this little module here. And it's super low latency. You can actually cast out to multiple units at the same time, which is really fun. And we sell other transmitters too. Like we have a TV transmitter, so you can actually integrate this into your home theater system. Another thing I didn't show is you can plug your phone directly in. You can open up an app like TikTok. You can open up your camera app, whatever it is. And those premium effects, those pro level effects, you know, at the level of not being able to differentiate between analog, that's going right into your phone. So if you want to, and it's as fast as you can open up your camera app and plug in a lightning cable, you're going to sound awesome. Like you would have, taken quite a long time to, record that in a kind of a home studio type setting. So that's the Jamstack 2, and there's more, but like that's the core.
Listen, man, thank you for making me a believer. Thank you for reinforcing my message that even the hardware part of the technology is incredible. And I know we haven't gotten to the software yet, but I saw you on there, and I've heard it a couple times before, and just at the click of a button to have the variation in the sound is just incredible to me, because it was significantly distinctive, or I could hear the distinction right away when you did it. So I can imagine the folks who are already purchasing the Jamstack 2 in pre-order state are just eager with anticipation to just unpack that and just have at it. Let's talk a little bit more about the other. I don't want to give away too much of the secret sauce. I know you've got a ton of the really neat things in the technology built in, and I know there's only so much we can share on this call because it is proprietary. I mean, you have the technology and the Jamstack hardware trademarked, and you have some work going under the copyright as well for some of the work you're doing in other parts of the business. So I don't want to share too much about the software, but would love to still give the audience a peek at it and show them what it can do, because from what I'm aware of and what other relatively plugged in people in the industry are saying about your software, this is going to revolutionize the way even creators make content. It's going to revolutionize the way people share and engage with music. And to use your terminology, it's gonna just explode the music IQ probably across the world as you're describing it. But would love to see the next part of your offering.
This is my phone.
Oh wow! Okay, incredible. All right.
Yeah, I've got my phone in my hand here.
It's just an app that opens up.
That's right.
All right, brilliant. Okay.
So I'm going to show you licensed music. Most of the music on this platform will be user generated in the future, but this is pre-launch. But this gives you, we're launching with 20,000 of the most popular songs on day one.
And you already have licensing agreements with these firms in place.
Yeah, we've figured out all the hard stuff with the licensing. Same way that we just tackled the hardware problems one at a time, right? And it is tricky. It's a tricky world, but we've got that part figured out here. So this is the browsing experience. There's you get a number of filters to choose from at the top here, and of course it's based on what we know that how you enjoy your music. But let's pause on Thunderstruck for a second. It's a good one to demonstrate. The really fun ways that you can use multi-track streaming is you can find where a piece of music kind of starts and ends. So right here is where the bass kicks in for Thunderstruck. Right there. Mm-hmm. And with a single click, you can isolate that track. So this is only the bass guitar. Now this is a really simple bass line, but if you wanted to try and learn how a musician did something or appreciate what they did, it's really, really powerful, and it's the easiest, best way to do it. You can loop it, you can slow it down, and once you've figured it out, you can bring everything back and then take that away. So now you've got what you could call a smart backing track, or you could also refer to it as karaoke for musicians. So the vocal is there, so you're welcome to take that out, turn it down, sing along, turn the bass up, which is also really fun. Normally when you turn the bass knob up on your car, you're turning the low frequencies up on the entire song, which means you're boosting the low end on the vocals and the drums and everything. But with this, you can actually just boost the things that you want to. And if you have a good stereo system, it sounds really incredible. It's just like this. You can see the level going up and down on that track. But here's where it becomes really powerful. So you click one button. I'm going to remove the lead guitar, from this piece of music, and then I'm going to hit record. So you could choose to record your version of the solo, or you could rap, you could play the saxophone, violin, whatever you want to do.
So let me get this right. You can actually remove one of the instruments and replace it with your own rendition of that instrument.
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
That's right. And you can create a custom mix, you can turn things up and down, you can delete tracks as you wish, and then you can record. And then that piece of content now, it gets redistributed, right? So now people can then go and say, wow, I really liked this Thunderstruck with this cool different solo on it, but I want to change the drums. I want to use my electric drum kit or whatever. And then you can do that, and then it just becomes this kind of infinite cycle of consuming and enjoying these kind of remixes. And of course you can start from absolutely nothing, right? You can just completely hit record and say, like, this is an idea. You can upload stuff that you had 10 years ago, put it on there, and then now you've got a new piece of music. This is just me talking, and then share that out into the world.
Incredible.
Everything is saved in a playlist type format, kind of like a file storing system. So stuff that you're working on, stuff that you've published. So every time you go to someone's profile, it's like, wow, that bass player is really cool. I would love to hear more stuff that they've played on. You go to their profile and you can see all of their public playlists, and you can enjoy more music from that person the same way you expect to be able to do it on YouTube.
So Chris, it just occurs to me, in my excitement, I just have some thoughts here. So which means that you can essentially, if you have friends from all over the world, you can essentially collab on essentially a global piece, but on one platform, which would be this.
Absolutely. So you can, you make a thread, kind of like Instagram, where you kind of say, pick a few buddies, say, hey, I just recorded this session. It's still in draft, but you can send it directly into the platform and say, I love your opinion. I'd love you to add something to this. And you can just work on something effortlessly whenever you have time. Like, you don't have to all be there at the same time. And you can add pieces, and it's just living. It's a living, breathing, almost like a Google Doc, right? Where you're collaborating on something. And then publish it whenever you feel that you want to publish it. Imagine for teaching too, your teacher being able to say, hey, this is a backing track in C. We just been working on our scale. I'd love you to play along and send this back to me, and then I'll give you, and I can comment directly on the session, and you can kind of just collaborate.
My mind is just exploding with ideas here. Like, you talked about even vocals being removed in some of the more popular tracks out there, and folks who love to sing still having that ability to do it with the instruments in the back of the music on the soundtrack, and them adding the vocals. I'm understanding that part correctly as well, right?
Yeah, of course.
That's really cool.
Karaoke is a huge market, and it's really fun. And the ability for and there's the amount of talent out there in the world back then is unbelievable. Like, there are vocalists on TikTok that have 1,000 followers that would make you cry. Like, they're really, really good. And this is going to accelerate, I think, them getting a following and getting noticed.
I agree. This is what I love about technology. You used the term earlier, democratizes access to these high barrier to entry environments, i.e. cost in some cases, and specifically here, spending thousands of dollars to get you what Jamstack can do, I think, from the numbers you're talking about, at a fraction of the cost. So, and that's not even the real value to me. Is while the barrier to entry is reduced, there's so much more value on the technology platform. This is really powerful.
And they work together, I should mention.
Okay.
You don't need to have a Jamstack piece of hardware to make this work. I want to make that clear. You could, if you have a existing home studio setup, use that. You can sing into your phone. You can use headphones. There's a number of ways people are doing this already. Of course, if you have a Jamstack, it's the easiest, possible way, and the most, you can literally just hit a button. You can also, if you're back into Thunderstruck, you can synchronize with that audio, and basically with one button, your hardware now sounds exactly like that instrument did. So imagine, you're a kid, you're learning Thunderstruck, you want to play along. With one button, you mute it. With another button, you synchronize your guitar to sound like Malcolm Young from AC/DC. So that's another reason, you might want to use them together. But again, you don't have to. It's just it's a really powerful experience because, of course, we control and can integrate both of those things together.
Chris, as we talk about this, I wanted to just reference some of the data that I've seen. Of course, I've got to pay attention to the business environment on our desk, and of course, make sure that we support strong, successful Canadian businesses as well. At PANGEA. So there's an article out of Variety magazine that said that more than 50% of non-professional US creators now monetize their content. And this information was produced by an Adobe study. It was called the Future of Creativity Study. It was released in October of this year and examined how non-professional creators who engage in creative activities as a hobby or side pursuit, and this is in contrast to full-time creators, are monetizing their content. The study found that almost half of non-professional creators, about 48%, now earn money from their creative activities, with higher percentages, get this, in Brazil at 59%, and of course the US just over 50, Germany at 51, UK at 51, and South Korea at 51. And that's probably before them being aware of the technology like Jamstack and the software that Jamstack is offering. I see you as an accelerator. I see the work that you're doing here really is going to explode that creator economy as folks become more aware of what they can do with the Jamstack solution, both hardware and software, really.
Yeah, let's get that to 90%, right? I mean, there's no, if you're talented,
sure.
And you, again, most people have jobs, they have a life, but they're also very talented, and dedicating your life to being a musician is a huge risk and a huge amount of time. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve to get paid for being great and people enjoying your stuff. It doesn't mean that you don't deserve a following and a platform that might allow you to bridge the gap between a side hustle. And this is very close to me also, because Jamstack, I had a full-time job. I was feeding my family. And this was a side hustle until I was able to quit my job, and crowdfunding did that for us. But the ability to give people who deserve to be professionals or being full-time content creators, they need a platform for that. YouTube does a pretty good job. It's still, you gotta slog it out for a while before your AdSense are giving you enough money to do this full time, and that's fine. But we hope that if you are providing meaningful, interesting audio content, getting tons of views, we're able to monetize that. We're going to make sure that we pay those artists, and that's of course going to bring win-win for everybody. It's going to bring more people onto that platform, and it's just fun. It's not, it's not a ton of work. You're not setting up cameras and lights. You're not becoming a social media manager. You're not having to do all of these auxiliary things. You're just playing music, showing your talent, and getting rewarded for it.
It sounds like you just simplified the entire process, which I think is what most folks with busy lives want. If you can simplify my life, reduce barriers to entry, and I'm having fun, I'm interested. Tell me more. And it sounds like you're hitting a number of winning pieces with the Jamstack technology. And I wanted to talk about what that means for your current customers. And I wanted to understand some of the feedback that your current customers are giving you, and even learn what your current customers enjoy most about your products.
Yeah, I remember the feeling when we started shipping our first product. Because you talk to them as best you can, you do emails, but until they experience it, you don't actually know what people are going to enjoy most, right? There was a lot of different elements that were different. So we were and it was really cool to hear for the first time. And I think one thing Jamstack is really good at doing is talking to their customers, understanding what they want. And we have private social groups. We've got a lot of surveys. I've picked up the phone bunch of times and talk to customers, and that's one of my favorite things. The word that comes up the most, and again, the software we'll be launching early next year, and I know what struggles people are dealing with. On the hardware side, the word versatility comes up all the time. Some people you'll find are like obsessed with attaching it to their guitar. They just love the feeling of having audio like coming out of their body. They can just walk and and you can see like how quick that was when you pick it up. Others, that's not what they're interested in. They want to, make a lot of content. They want to just, it's all about setup time sometimes. Like it's all about being able to throw it in their backpack. But yes, the lack of friction, the lack of headache, the lack of steps, that's probably number 2. So versatility, number 1, being able to sound like different things and do different things with one device. Number 2 is how fast and frictionless and convenient it is to get going. And with the software, it'll be the same thing. It's reducing friction to and getting people to do things that they may not even consider doing because of the frictions involved of ripping something off, putting it online, recording it, re-uploading it, that whole thing.
You've obviously dedicated a lot of time with your team to really dive deep into the user experience. That's what I'm hearing. This is what's coming back to me right now, because you live it, you breathe it yourself. So if it passes at least the test on your desk, it's or at least through your musical instrument, your guitar, that the other folks may have a closer time enjoying it the way that you do. So I really appreciate you having a hands-on contribution to this project from the ground up, and that really makes a big difference. I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit to talk a little bit about the business environment. I know that Jamstack is growing, expanding, and I know there's a ton of opportunity that we can definitely table in terms of support for Jamstack. You also have a ton of support around the advisory table currently with some very senior people in the music industry. And I want to get there at some point with whomever you can share details on. But before we get there, I wanted to also talk about the bigger macro climate. I wanted to talk about Jamstack still having significant pre-sales, and your first Jamstack unit was what we would likely describe as a very significant success. But during the financial crisis of 2008, for guitar sales in the US, I want to talk about musical instruments. What I'm about to quote is from Canadian Music Trade magazine. They said during the financial crisis of 2008, musical instrument sales dropped to about 821 million in the US. But since the Great Recession back in 2009, bounced back, topping 8 billion worldwide after that in 2019, and that's not including sales of used instruments. And then, of course, after 2019, we had the big COVID-19 pandemic, and in 2020, guitar sales were 1.67 billion, and global guitar sales topped 9.2 billion. Approximately that was about a 15% year-over-year increase. Now, it's curious when folks talk about things like a pandemic or a recession. There's nothing like the pandemic really to put things in perspective. One of the things many people rediscovered during the pandemic, and that was since March 2020, is that although they have more time wasting options in the palm of their hands than ever before, they actually got back to basics, hands-on activities like playing musical instruments. They discovered it was a great way to de-stress, recharge, and reinvigorate themselves. So this is the data that I find fascinating, that I wanted to share back, because I'm sure you're hearing feedback from your users of how I'm going to use this term, but use it within context, how therapeutic it was to have Jamstack close by so they could actually have that as a release, de-stressing outlet during a really stressful time through the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I feel good about that for sure. And it is interesting to see their resurgence. And I believe more guitars were sold during those 24 months than at any period previously. There's going to be a huge need to support the people that continue to stick with their instrument. I also think it's important to mention that, yes, we've definitely optimized the Jamstack 2 as a guitar amplifier in terms of your whole effects chain, but whatever you want to plug. We have customers that are violin players, synth players, even some vocalists that just want to be able to record really easily, add a bunch of delay, echo, reverb, like all those things are relevant. Doesn't matter what instrument you play. So yeah, it's a growing market. It's an important market. It's really, playing music is really important to people, and having a audio companion like the Jamstack kind of always with you, it means that important part of your life is just always there, and it's always kind of just one click away.
And that ease of use really is important, I think, in the user experience. Not only important, but vital. It's different. It's transformational. In terms of where you're headed with Jamstack in the coming 12 months, can you give us a peek into what your future looks like from the business side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So 12 months, we've got the hardware launch, we've got the software launch, the shipping of the Jamstack 2, which I'm really excited about very soon. We've got the software launching next year. We've got, so it's also important to mention that the hardware is a platform. So I'm not going to give too much away about how we're going to utilize that platform, but the wireless technology, the way we use Bluetooth, all the digital effects, the firmware, all that is going to be utilized in other form factors. Next year, I'd like to say we're going to have a larger form factor, and potentially some other form factors as well of that. They all work together, of course. They all allow you to get access into the phone. They all have great sounds built in. All, again, just reducing more and more friction points and giving people more options depending on what they're interested in. On the software side, in the short term, starting to scale that, getting our users, getting their feedback, of course. Like, it'd be hubris to say that there's not going to be that process. And then near the end of that period of time, starting to work with labels and artists to launch at least elements of their music on our platform. Like, taking a song from a new album release. This has been done many times in the past, where they'll have a website link where you can download the multi-tracks to their songs. And it's a great way. Well, first of all, the remixes that come out of it are always amazing. It's always super fun. It creates a lot of buzz for that artist. It creates a lot of interest in their music. And we want to do that, but in a social platform where it's, effortless and doesn't require any special knowledge. So, those are and we've got a long pipeline of features and different monetization elements that will continue past that, but that's the next 12 months.
Yeah, that's, you touched on something interesting that I think most folks will get to know sooner rather than later. And the folks who are already doing it live and breathe it. For example, the artists who benefit from the TikTok usage of sampling their music, they've just seen a massive resurgence in, I'm going to use this term, it's the revenue and royalties that they receive for their music being picked up. And I think the direct correlation here from a business perspective for Jamstack is that this is also another content creator platform with some significant distinctions that will actually be another way to create another wave of usage of artists' music. That, of course, you're working with different houses to get licenses and so on, and you have 2,000, as you mentioned already. So there's a ton of opportunity here for Jamstack and what we're up to. I wanted to leave you with any final thoughts before we look to close off this call, and I have a couple more thoughts to share finally for us. But any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience on Jamstack and what you feel is important for them to be aware of as we head into the next 3 years?
I would say, one thing that's hard to communicate, I think it's fairly easy to communicate why our products are special and interesting. I mean, cool videos do that. One thing that is a little harder to communicate is that, we are mission driven. We're all musicians here at Jamstack, and we're on our mission to reduce the friction elements that you're experiencing as a musician, to make those experiences more rich and more interesting. And yeah, I think if that is interesting to you, check us out. And yeah, we've got a lot of really fun, exciting things planned in the works. There's a lot of effort and barriers to making all of these things happen, but we don't compromise on the quality of the products that we create. And I think everyone's going to be really excited with the stuff that we have planned in the next few months.
You talked about quality, and I think what's a really neat segue into the quality conversation is around where your Jamstack hardware is manufactured. And I'll let you say where it's manufactured in the same environment as some pretty prominent brands. So you could probably speak on that for a couple seconds if you'd like to share. Yeah,
we were really fortunate to get a partner, a manufacturing partner of the highest class, and there's a number of ways that happened. I mean, some of it was the excitement around the Jamstack One. I don't think that would have been an option for us, coming out of nothing. But they saw the potential, and we will be manufacturing. It's the same facility that makes, speakers for the iPhone and a lot of other great brands like Bose and Sennheiser and Sonos and all of those guys. And that means, it means quality. It means it does a lot of work to work with those people, because the amount of documentation and rigor that has to go in, but that's what's needed for the scale that we're talking about and for the kind of quality checks. And that they also were involved in the custom drivers that we produced, and the audio tuning and all of that resources were available to us, which is something that a startup it's pretty rare for a startup to get access. So I'm very, very grateful for them and for their faith in what we're doing, and taking a bit of a chance on them, because their time and resources are valuable when they have, working with these huge clients. But I think they see the potential in what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. There are a few thoughts I want to wind up our conversation with. Actually, it's a quote from Forbes magazine, where you've also been featured in an article some time ago. You were in Forbes, but this new article talks about the bigger, tougher fiscal times that we're in right now, and about consumer behavior in tough economic times. The quote says this from the magazine, from the article rather. It says, "In tough fiscal times, consumers flock to entertainment and escapism, which means that there will always be demand for innovative products and services. Also, this means that many companies are turning to digital platforms to reach their audiences, providing a significant opportunity for the creative economy," which we've touched on already. And also, to conclude this thought, even in these turbulent times, creativity may, in fact, might actually spike. And according to the theory of frugal innovation, the process of developing products and services that are simple and affordable, yet still offer value to customers, will actually be set up for tremendous success during this part of the economic cycle, which I think Jamstack, according to our assessment at PANGEA, is positioned to do so. Would love your final thoughts on that as we look to wrap up the call.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, regardless of what is happening, whether we're in tough economic times or great economic times, music and entertainment is not an optional thing, right? The need for those things are deep human needs, right? It's like people are going to need food, they're going to need water, they're going to need music and entertainment. That's just a fact, and you can see how that's been true throughout history. And it is something that soothes us in difficult times, and it's always going to be there, and it's always going to be growing and evolving, and that is a strength I think that we have for sure. Whereas because we're operating in a space that's even though it's not often seen that way, it's a human need.
I appreciate you saying that, and what a lovely sentiment to conclude this call on, that music and entertainment is a human need that nourishes the soul. Thank you, Chris, for joining us on this edition of PANGEA Talks CEO Series. We'd love to have you back as we discuss the progress of Jamstack in the coming quarters. Congratulations on such a tremendous contribution to the Canadian business landscape and to music, and to those who love and are passionate about creating change through the creator economy, as well as through music creation in their lives, with their families and their communities. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be in touch with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
Cheers. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye now.